When you've decided to terminate an employee, you're going to have to decide how you're going to terminate them. So there's generally one of two ways you can terminate an employee. The first way is you can terminate with cause and thus no notice. The second way is with notice, so without cause. With cause termination should only be done in very rare circumstances, and you're going to want to consult an employment lawyer prior to taking that step. When you've decided to terminate an employee without cause and to pay them notice, you first have to decide how much notice you're going to pay them. The first step should be to look at the employment contract and see if there's any sort of termination clause in that contract. If there is a termination clause in the contract, you're also going to want to consider whether that contract is still valid, both in the way that the law has developed and also if it's still valid to what that employee is doing. Once you've decided how much notice you're going to pay this employee, then you have to draft a termination letter. That termination letter should first confirm the employee has in fact been terminated, outline how much notice you're going to provide them. You should then outline whether they have to work that notice or whether it's going to be pay in lieu of that notice. You may want to consider providing an additional payment in exchange for a full and final release, and if you do decide to do that, that should also be in the termination letter. There should also be a process for return of company property and a deadline for the employee's response. The termination meeting should be scheduled and it should be done face-to-face. Best practices would dictate that the termination meeting is scheduled either at the beginning or at the end of the day in order to minimize the other employee interruption and just minimize the amount of employees that are witnessing what's happening. Once a termination meeting occurs, you want to use very clear and unambiguous language that the employee is in fact terminated. You want to provide them the termination letter that you've drafted and tell them to consider that letter. You also want to avoid negotiating with the employee. Ask the employee to consider the letter and to take the time, and if they have any questions or concerns, that they can get those questions or concerns to you in writing. Tell the employee that someone will go with them to their desk to clean out their things. Have that someone there on standby so that they can accompany the employee to their desk. After the termination meeting and after the desk has been cleaned out, if there's any concerns or any other property left over, you can tell the employee that things can be couriered to their home.